deliveries for Pets.com, purely in an advisory role. I like your shorts. You're a good-looking fella. I hope they're home. Oh, wow, you cats hit the jackpot. There's enough food here to feed a lion. What goes up? Try to get it. Try to get it. Try to get the burger. Must come down. I got it. Spinning wheel, round and round. Pets.com, because pets can't drive.
Pets.com. A simple name for a simple website. It was a website all about pets. The fuzzies, the scalies, all sorts of adorable creatures, and spiders. Whatever you kept as a pet, they'd probably have something for you. Because it was an online store. Completely online. Making it a lot more distinctive than the other companies we've been talking about lately. Because, while many of them were brick and mortar mainly, and a lot of them failed to get into the online scene, Pets.com started out online and was only online. It was an online retailer, and that can be very lucrative, especially in the modern day, with the success of companies like Amazon, Newegg, eBay, and a whole bunch of others. And perhaps even more related, Chewy. And Chewy's around. Chewy's very successful. So what happened to Pets.com? Why didn't they succeed? How long did they even last? 2 years. That's it. They only lasted 2 years. It's embarrassing. Why? Why would they fail so hard? If Chewy can do it, what did Pets.com do wrong? Well, in Pets.com case, it was a lot of just horrid mismanagement. Just the worst management in most categories, as well as poor timing. The origin of Pets.com goes all the way back to 1994, November 21st, when that domain name was registered by a Pasadena-based entrepreneur named Greg Miclemore. Getting that domain early was probably a very good call, as those simple domain names based off of commonly used words like pets or cars or houses, apartments.com will inevitably, even if you yourself don't necessarily start a company, you'll likely be able to sell the domain name for a tremendous amount of money because of how lucrative it is. Simple domain names are almost always desirable over more complicated ones. But Miclemore did want to use it, and the Pets.com website formally launched in early November 1998. And the company was incorporated in February of 1999. Miclemore would run the company himself, though eventually he would sell it in early '99 to Julie Wainwright, and the company would have their initial public offering. Amazon was one of the biggest investors in Pets.com, interestingly enough. Their first round of venture funding netted them a ton of money, and Amazon themselves wound up with a majority stake, 54% in Pets.com. In total, by March of '99, Pets.com received $10.5 million to fund their operations, and Julie Wainwright was the CEO. Now, Pets.com made a lot of mistakes, but I do want to talk about the one thing they did right, and that was marketing. My God, their marketing was top tier, just chef's kiss perfection. Because the thing about advertising is that you want to be eye-catching and memorable. You don't just want to tell people about the product. I mean, you do, but you also want to make people remember the product, generally by entertaining them. And the way they did that was to make their ads funny by introducing a dog sock puppet, who never had a formal name, but people began to recognize the Pets.com dog. He was hilarious and voiced by Michael Ian Black.
Just hit the buzzer, Andy. I brought something for you from Pets.com. I'm here to play with the tabby cat. I'm not gonna tell you what it is, but it makes you crazy. 1, 2, 3. Oh, sorry. Pets.com, because pets can't drive.
This little mascot cemented Pets.com in people's minds and drew customers to the website, purely because they liked the ads and wanted to see what the site was all about. As it turned out, they offered pet supplies at reasonable prices. Food, toys, kitty litter, whatever you wanted, they probably had it. Most of the investment money went into the marketing as well as necessary infrastructure, because if you think that these online-only storefronts don't have any infrastructure, you'd be wrong. They have less than a brick-and-mortar setup, certainly, but they still need infrastructure like warehouses and supply chains. They have to have a way of organizing, stocking, and getting the products to their customers. That's why Amazon has so many warehouses. And indeed, they spend a tremendous amount of money on said infrastructure, but in their defense, that was probably the investment to make. Where they spent too much was probably in the marketing. I mean, the marketing was great, but they spent a lot of money on it. Not only did their dog get a balloon in the Macy's Day Parade, but they even paid for a Super Bowl ad. That alone was $1.2 million because it's a Super Bowl ad. It was a good ad, don't get me wrong, but it was a lot of money. But they fully expected to be able to make all of that back because, well, hey, we're an online store. You don't have to go out to get your pet food and stuff. You can just order it online. It's great and wonderful. Then the dot-com bubble burst. Yeah, that was part of their problem. It was the timing. That crash of the dot-com scene spelled the end for a lot of online retailers, particularly specialized ones that only offered a certain range of products. Amazon and eBay weathered the storm because they offered a lot of general merchandise, even back then. Not as much as Amazon does now, but they did, and eBay was still propped up by their auction house. Other websites maintained their strategy because, well, they were based off of a brick-and-mortar place, and brick-and-mortar stores were still pretty popular. But Pets only had their website and only had a certain range of products. And the other factor was that even at the time, convincing people to order online and only do that was a hard sell. It isn't like it is today. Nowadays, everyone is still doing that. And yes, the economy was going that way, but not quite yet. It wouldn't be till the late 2010s that online sales really spiked, and a lot of people were doing that over brick-and-mortar establishments. But back in the late 90s, people still kind of preferred to go to the store. It was just normal for them. And while they did attract some customers, the problem with them is that they made basically no money on any of the sales ever. You may recognize this as a bit of a problem, and why was that? Well, it was a few things. What they were trying to do was to encourage customer loyalty by offering really good prices. But the problem with this is that customers weren't necessarily willing to pay more for other stuff that they knew they can get at brick and mortar cheaper. So customers only paid for the stuff that Pets.com was actually selling at a loss. In some cases, 1/3 of the price they had paid to get the products in the first place. This is quite obviously a ludicrous losing strategy because you're literally not making any money. You can't sustain a company selling stuff at a loss all the time. Yes, some big box establishments sell certain specific items at a loss to give good deals, but then they have all this other stuff in the store right in front of your eyes. People just weren't accustomed to browsing an online shop back then. Whereas in brick and mortar, it was generally the attitude of, well, that is a bit more expensive, but I'm already here anyway. But online isn't as good at pushing impulse buying as brick and mortar is in most cases. And the reason they had to sell a lot of it at such a low price was their other major issue, shipping. They offered a lot of free shipping deals, and that's pretty normal. Amazon does that all the time. But that's today. Back then, shipping was different, and there wasn't yet an economical way to ship heavy things. I don't know if most of you know this, but certain pet items are actually pretty heavy. Large bags of food, for dogs especially, or cat litter. Both those things weigh a good bit, and the result was that shipping fees were very expensive. When Pets.com offered free shipping, that was great for the customer, but they had to eat that cost. In a lot of cases, it was way beyond any money they would have made on the items normally. True, there were other smaller items like toys that didn't cost that much to ship, but most people were buying things like food, heavy stuff that they didn't want to carry home themselves. And that meant that Pets.com was repeatedly, constantly, incessantly just getting destroyed by the shipping fees, and they had no way around it, because they wanted to push customers into higher margin purchases, but nobody bit for that. And they were afraid to raise their prices, figuring it would draw customers away. And they were probably right in those days. That meant that even during their second fiscal year, they were selling merchandise for around 27% less than the cost. And this was very bad timing for them to be doing this, because that was right after the Super Bowl ad, which did draw a lot of traffic to them. People were shopping with them and buying stuff from them, but they were selling the stuff at a loss. It doesn't take a genius to figure out why this isn't going to work. In an effort to cut costs, in September of 2000, they opened a new customer service call center in Greenwood, Indiana, and relocated the majority of their workforce to there, as it was cheaper in that state. But this was only staving off the inevitable. What they needed was a buyer. They needed someone to take them over and try to fix their problems. PetSmart did put in an offer, but it was less than the net cash value of Pets.com, so they turned it down. And on November 7th, 2000, they were forced to announce that they would cease taking orders on November 9th at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. They then laid off 255 of their 320 employees and proceeded to enter liquidation. They had no way forward. They had been operating at a net loss this whole time, and there just wasn't anything they could do anymore, especially with the decline of the market at the time. It was a bad situation for them to be in, even if they were generating a profit. They weren't, though. So it was really impossible. To their credit, the liquidation process meant they could pay back most of their investors. They did make it a point to do that, which was good of them, actually. A lot of companies try to get out of doing that, but they managed to do it. And despite the fact they had refused PetSmart's offer during the liquidation process, some assets wound up being sold to them. And even now, if you type in pets.com, it redirects you to PetSmart.com. The whole liquidation of the company was completed on January 16, 2001. It's a shame because Chewy's proven that there is a market online for pet supplies. It seems that Pets.com, while a good idea, was plagued with bad management decisions as well as the simple fact that it was too soon. People probably weren't ready for it, and the .com bubble bursting did not help. What about their adorable dog? What about the sock puppet? What happened to him? I bet you're really worried about the sock puppet. Well, I have good news for you. The sock puppet kind of obtained a cult following. People really liked him. And during the liquidation process, the rights to him were purchased, though they labeled it as an adoption, which is kind of adorable, by Bar None Incorporated. If you're not old enough to remember the Pets.com commercials, you might be old enough to remember the Bar None commercials.
You're pretty. Waiting long?
Yeah, and I'm late.
No car, huh?
Bad credit.
I got a car.
Hey, I can't get financing.
Sure you can. It's easy. Just call 1-800-BAR-NONE. If you need car financing, even if you have bad credit, 1-800-BAR-NONE could get you approved in minutes.
1-800-BAR-NONE? You can? I am? Really?
Scintillating. Need a car? Call 1-800-BAR-NONE. Everyone deserves a second chance, bar none. Call now.
Bar None doesn't have a very long history. They were a lead generation company based in Oakland, California. Basically, their whole thing was trying to help people with bad credit get auto loans to get cars. They decided to utilize the dog in their own ad campaign for several years, though they themselves are now out of business. But during the time they were utilizing him, they used the slogan, "Everyone deserves a second chance," which was a pretty good slogan, both referring to their customers who had poor credit but needed a loan, as well as the puppet. And let's be fair, Pets.com didn't fail because of him. They failed because of everything else, really. It was a disaster. 2 years, millions of dollars, and 2 years, and y'all ruined it. It was great. It's top tier work, everyone. And with that, a special thank you to all my underwater train finders, some Dude 267, Benjamin Owens, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, Jack Carson's Road Videos, Lord Off 444, Isurfer 1405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matt Weaver, Tom Red Lion, NS Productions 8104, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds, The Baxter, Caleb Crosswhite, Josh Johnson, Caleb Rainwaters, Prez Drenton, Master of None, Travis Dolinsky, JBL Explorers, Tommy Rossini, Ben McCullough, Panzer Kitsune 131-232, Mark Holding, G Wiz, Mr. Terrevel, Hayden DeGrow, No, Kurt Forkham, Mr. Sleepy, Harry, Drew Debris, George Kenny, Kevin Wood, Liam Wright, Hendrick Motorsports Fan 5, Hannah Bird, Duraushi, A Person 723, William Nemo, Dr. Racer 78, Shimasu, Eric Hutton, NJ 1969, Metal for Life Guy, Andrew Bowen, Crimson Rose, Ryan Wehofer, Jared Brussel, Zintac M, Boss K, Orange Glass, Andy, The Conceptualist, Acoletti, Ohio Trucker 1, Windy City Rails, and of course, my dad. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.